Over the last few years, if you've been looking at getting particularly specialised adapters in the world of NAS, connecting an M.2 slot to an Oculink port, you reutilising an M.2 slot into 10GBE and bridging a lot of those really complicated connections from USB4 and Thunderbolt to internal connectors and PCBs and bridge boards to bring them together, chances are you've been utilising a lot of adapters from websites like AliExpress, Alibaba and even Amazon. Now, most of them, frankly, are made here in Shenzhen, China. But a weird thing that's become apparent over the years is no matter which listing you would look at, and you've followed the channel for a while, you may know, when you go online and you buy these more budget adapters and you look at where the drivers come from and where the builds and the schematics come from, and even the retail packaging, you find two names keep appearing, IOEST and Lekuo, if I'm pronouncing that right. Now, these two brands actually make all of them. They are the same organisation, and if you've gone from Storage Review to Server the Home to NAS Compares, you would have spotted the retail packaging having that word IOEST. This is where they're at. This is IOEST. They seem to be the company that make all of these adapters, and you very rarely find their name. We're going to pop in, ask them a bunch of questions, have a look at their adapters, find out their workflow, and find out what else they're cooking up. Let's head inside. Okay, so myself and Katie arrived at about 10 o'clock in the morning and we're pretty quick to make our way into the larger office space. We were greeted in to a larger office area, whereupon we met the founder and CEO of both IOEST and Lekuo, and alongside that the Vice President Sally and Mandy, the Sales Director, someone I'd already spoken to, who helped me arrange this meeting originally. And from there, the Q&A kind of kicked off immediately and I went through my list of questions. Quick thing, one, this video isn't being sponsored by this brand, and also I did send the questions 24 hours in advance, largely because I wanted to make sure they had time to service answers for me. But with regards to the questions themselves, it's worth highlighting the Q&A went on for the better part of around 30 to 40 minutes, so I'm not going to include the whole thing here, but the full Q&A will be available on the channel later, either via an unlisted link or just as a separate members only video. But if you do want a copy of it, you're going to have access to it there. But I'm going to go and skim over some of the questions and answers and also link to them below as well. Now, to summarise the content of those questions, I asked about the age of the company, which sat around 20 to 25 years there. And again, we are talking about the difference between IOEST and the more consumer and direct-to-business facing Lekuo company there. Alongside that, all of the IP, all of the designs were all in-house. They are all theirs and all developed in-house. The most popular product is seemingly still USB4 to 10 gig NIC adapters, alongside that M.2 to 10 GBE RJ45 adapter that we talked about before. That is seemingly the one they're the most proud of right now. Alongside that, I did wanted to know why a lot of their products are available broadly across AliExpress, Alibaba, Amazon and more without their name attached. We talked about it before and I mentioned it in the intro that a lot of the time you can get hold of one of their products with their name and branding on, but it's never on the product listing. A lot of that is to do with kind of their direct OEM level business, and a lot of the time some of the bigger businesses, and we're talking the top 7, utilise some of their products and some of their adapters in their production environment with the strict understanding that they do not market under their own name, a common problem, and a lot of NDA linked stuff there as well. And again, a lot of it comes down to them looking for the problems found online. I did ask them about whether development of these solutions is them first providing the solutions and then people researching it and find out if they're suitable, or the other way around. And they seem to be pretty built on the idea that they do look for existing problems online and then steer their development in that direction. But again, all of that development is done in-house. Some of the research that's done online looking for kind of needs and gaps in the market is done in-house with a lot of their development teams. The majority of solutions are business to business. The smaller scale of them are business to customer or B2C, but still they are trying to grow that area of their business with the Lekuo branding there. And the same goes for the testing and the Q&A when it comes to a lot of their products being shipped. Again, a lot of that is covered in the Q&A. Their big selling point has always been how they compare with the likes of Sonnet, OWC, Sabrent, and then going up even higher into some of the more higher production Blackmagic and Atto solutions, which again They have solutions on their portfolio to compare against them, but the Lekuo and IOEST solutions are sometimes 20% of the price of those bigger scale solutions, with the RMA being handled in most cases directly by them or with replacement being provided to their sales partners in between. Again, one of my other questions was talking about bridging between them and third-party companies, Aoostar, CWWK, Johnsbow, etc. And it does turn out that there's still a lot of crossover because people buy these solutions all bound together, so they're pretty aware of that in their chain. And finally, I really want to talk more about where they want to be in 12 to 24 months. When I asked them about this at length, they seem pretty adamant that where they want to be is that their consumer side is a much bigger, well-known name in the same way that some of those other brands that I've mentioned earlier on are kind of known names outside of the Chinese market. And I do think if they can just put out there that name for Lekuo the same way they have with IOEST, or at the very least that those solutions are still prominently placed in the way they are on e-commerce websites, I think they're going to do it. But let's move over to the area of this video I think a lot of you want to see, and that is those new fancy products. Let's talk about some of those now. I should also add that the majority of these I did pick up when I was visiting the brand, so a number of these are going to have their own dedicated reviews very, very soon. But for now, this is just a quick teaser on some of the new products they're developing, some for the future and some available right now. Firstly, arguably the product that made me the most interested to really facilitate this meeting, although I've been meaning to meet with IOEST for the last year or so. It was this docking station that really interested me. We've talked about USB 4 to 10 gig NICs in the past from this brand, but this is a USB 4 to 10 GBE docking station, factoring in a copper 10 gig NIC and alongside that a dual SD card slot design alongside several 10 gig USB ports, all rolled into a silent, that's a fanless docking station there, taking advantage of heat dissipation on a metal external casing. Again, we've got one of these for the channel and I'm going to be putting it through its paces very, very soon. But at sub $100, this thing intrigues the hell out of me when you factor in that it is arriving right now alongside an existing USB 4 to 10 gig NIC. This solves a lot of problems for the latest Mac owners, and for someone that's recently purchased a TB5 MacBook, this is never going to leave my bag if it works out as well as they say. Next, following up that popular USB 4 to 10 gig external adapter, this is one that moves away from copper and into SFP. Again, no fan, this is a silent SFP alternative to the copper variation, but alongside that, there is a dual port 10 gig and dual port 25 gig version. Now these are arriving again because they're SFP based. One of them is using QSFP and one's using standard SFP for the 25 gig and 10 gig connections there. We'll be returning to this design later on. Again, ventilation on either end and heat dissipation there at the top. The other thing that I really liked about this, have you noticed that little red button? This has an active power on and off, something I cover later on. I love the idea that this can be utilized on the fly and you can power off the system when you're not using it. For a standalone docking station, when you're kind of taking your MacBook on the go for your editing but need a docking station to power it on when you need it and not have it on when you don't, that's quite handy and a weirdly rare thing to find. Also a barrel power input for additional oomph. Another quick product update, this is an M.2 to 10 gig SFP adapter. Not strictly new because it's very similar to what we've already seen, but it's a slightly refined design, ultimately meaning that those that want to take advantage of the long distance benefits of SFP on their more compact systems with only an M2, this is music to the ears. A slight change of pace here, this is a 4-bay DAS enclosure that connects via USB 4 with a Gen 4 M.2 NVMe slot built in. A single slot there, I know some of you might have liked a dual port there, and it is a DAS, not a NAS, but still nonetheless, there's a decent amount of storage with a hot M.2 drive all built in there, all into a singular enclosure. Again, it does require a soft RAID, there's no hardware RAID card inside, but they are developing a new version of it, and it's dual port TB4 like a number of the other options for daisy chain. And while we're talking about USB 4 connectivity and M.2s, I do think it's worth knowing that good old traditional PCIe is getting something of a look in as well. I know what you're thinking, this looks like your bog standard sort of card here, it's got some SATA, there's plenty of SATA PCIes in the market right now. Well, this SATA has got a 2.5 gig NIC, it has 2 USB-C ports and a USB-A there. It also outputs onto 4 SATA outputs there. And we've got an additional output cable that allows you to attach further USBs, depending on your case there and how you can have availability for these. This simple cable running at Gen 4 × 1, so that's 20 gigabits per second bandwidth there to play with, is more than enough to facilitate a lot of these outputs going into this card. Again, if you're running a smaller, more compact case, maybe that Johnspo N10, maybe you're running a small little shuttle case, this is a huge amount of capability, and particularly as we're seeing more and more devices arrive with support of Fanout. We're seeing a lot more devices arriving with HD Mini SAS 8088, and we've got devices like these whereby these boxes here can output via a USB type 4 there, that 40 gig USB, into Fanout there for additional storage. And that can run in either direction, whether it is you're going to be utilizing an M.2 To that allows you to connect a couple of those adapter cables via that Fanout to add more, with something we talked about on the channel before, to add up to 8 drives into a single M.2 NVMe there, or you do it in reverse. That's really intriguing to me, that they're viewing this from both directions, externally and internally. Seriously, in all my years doing this gig, I will say I have never encountered a brand yet that is so enthusiastic about showing off their gear. Don't get me wrong, there's some stuff that's NDA, there's some of it that you're not supposed to talk about, but this, I asked a slightly innocuous question. I asked, when I was looking at these little boxes here, one of them's got eight RJ45s going in there, and this is going out into a USB 4. I was like, oh, that's really cool. What's it like inside? And it turns out inside here, that has got its USB 4 into a couple of PCIe's inside there. They use this for testing their own gear internally. This is one of the devices they use, and then they just built a pattern around it. And then from there, because it's headless, so you don't have to worry about the client machine you're running on. It's USB 4 dockable, so it's an external. But this is a USB 4 PCIe dual connected adapter. And they kind of made it, if not by accident, the CEO, founder, made it himself, and he developed this. And now I hope this comes to retail, because notwithstanding, I like the idea you can use it for SATA cards, you can use it for network cards, but I can think of a lot of people that would love the idea of a tiny PCIe dock with 2 PCIes inside. And again, powered there with the USB there on the side, USB bus powered as well. Yes, you're going to have to think about the size of the cards you're going to use, and obviously power draw is a factor, but still, yum yum, I love the idea of this. And of course, you've got the barrel input for when you do need a bit more oomph there, you know, for bigger boy cards. And just as we were packing up to go, just as we were getting ready and getting our little bits together, they sprung this product in development that's, you know, still going through testing. So again, this may not even reach retail, but it's interesting to see the workflow. Remember earlier on when we talked about, when we were asking them about how things are developed and what comes first, the need or the you see what's possible. When we were talking earlier on, we were talking about adapters like this one. This is that USB 4 to dual 10 gig and also 25 gig version there as well. Now inside here is this mounted PCB. This mounted PCB here has 2 M.2 NVMe's and they're going onto that secondary board for the USB. But what you may have noticed is inside there, we have 2 different variations of network interface. We have an SFP and we have a copper. And they're looking at the ability to swap out and utilize different ones inside there. So whether it is you go for, say for this example that they're currently going through testing on, having an adapter that will provide both fiber and copper, something you just don't find online. And obviously driver management, cooling, that sort of thing, but there are plenty of devices in the market right now, lots of NAS devices and servers that have a combination of a 10 gig copper and a 10 gig SFP and a copper. But the idea that you'll be able to get an adapter that you can modularize and use your own bits and bobs, or just simply a USB 4 adapter that covers both bases, and that's before we even get into larger than 10 gigabit connections. I'm really interested to see where this kind of development goes. But there you go. In conclusion, I'm still really pleased with what this company is doing, and I hope that a year from now we're going to see their brand names Lekuo and IOEST being a lot more prominent on a lot of these product pages, because as mentioned in the video and in the Q&A that I'll refer back to in a second, this is a brand that's been around for a long time, and a lot of these adapters that we've been utilizing were made by these guys. Their name is on the retail packaging, but they never get to be on the product page listings. So let's talk about them more, and I look forward to sharing the dedicated reviews to some of the products that I've shown you today. And again, as mentioned, there is a full-length Q&A with the founder, the sales director, and the vice president coming very soon. And if it's popular enough, I'll publish it on the channel, but I understand it's very deep lore. But nonetheless, I'll post a link to it on the co-founder Patreon pages, but completely public, so not only paid members, but non-paid members can access. And I'll try and link to it as an unlisted link as soon as it's ready, here either pinned in the description or pinned in the comments. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking more about these guys very soon.